friends, welcome back to Book Time. Today we're doing something a little bit different. You are in my room. It is not clean. I do not care. It will be fine. But I hope that you're having a wonderful Monday. I actually had already pre-recorded a July wrap-up video, but it got deleted, 3 of the videos. So I was like, here we are again. So I have a ring light now and you're gonna see it in my glasses and it's gonna be okay. Sorry, I can't see without my glasses and I'm afraid to do contacts because I don't like anything touching my eye. Ew. So I have some great books that we're going to wrap up for July, so let's get right into it. I read a total of 10 books for the month of July, and it was actually a pretty good month. I do have a lot of wonderful reads in here that I really enjoyed. So let's start at the top of the list. Fine Print, The Fine Print by Laura Asher. I actually really liked this book. So this follows Zara and Rowan. And basically what happens is he is looking for somebody to kind of change the park in a way to make it more family friendly. This is the Dreamland Billionaire series that she has. So of course, it follows 3 brothers, and I can't remember all of their names. I know Rowan, Declan, and there's another one, and I haven't read his book yet, so I don't really know who he is. But it follows their story. Their grandfather passed away. They are left with an inheritance, but it comes with conditions. They have to meet certain criteria in the will to inherit the things that they have been left with. And so one of the things this son, Rowan, has to do before he can inherit the role that he's supposed to play at this park and get all of the money that he is supposed to receive, he has to find the park's weaknesses, and he has to find where they could do better, and he has to like change the face of the park and make it just like last longer, like that the park would reach more people, would reach families in a better way. And so just kind of like troubleshoot what would make it better. So that's where we are. And the story opens up where Zara actually works at the Dreamland Park. She is in the magic salon, so she does already work there, but she dreams of being a creator, and she has all these great ideas for the park and what like new exhibits and rides that they could have at the park. And so Rowan actually chooses, I guess, what you could call like a dream team, no pun intended, where he chooses select people to be on this panel, and he will have meetings with each of them and ask them like, what are the ways that we can improve the park, etc. And so he chooses her as one of these people. Well, from the get-go, she doesn't treat him like everybody else. She has a mind of her own. She's sassy. She is like, I will say what I say. It is what it is. Like, I'm going to be myself no matter who you are, no matter how rich you are. So she doesn't put up with this bull crap. And so he's not used to that. So he already has that charm that he's attracted to, like, okay, she is a contender. She's like me. She can put up with my bull crap. And so I feel like already from the get-go, they have this kind of like almost electric chemistry that's almost like aggressive in a way, because they're both like putting each other in each other's place all the time, but it blooms into more and the relationship really unfolds. There were some like open door icky parts, just to be warned. It's definitely open door, so if you want to skip those parts, feel free. But as a total, like looking at the full picture, the ending was really, really good. It was very magical and sweet. I really enjoyed it. And so I would say that this is a very solid 3-star. The reason I gave it a 3-star is because the character development, although great, wasn't amazing. And I did feel like the story's pace was a little bit lacking. Like they could have made it a little bit better, or she could have made it better. But overall, I gave it a 3-star and I liked it. It was a great story, wrapped up nicely. So yeah, check it out for sure. Next book that I read was a 4-star, and this is actually from Wendy, from Wendy's Inspired Reads, my bestie. She was like, you have to read this book. It's so good. This is Terms and Conditions, also by Lauren Asher, also part of the Dreamland Billionaire series. I liked this one a lot more. This follows Declan and Iris. And what I liked about this one is that, like, it's an arranged marriage, which I don't feel like that is going to be giving much away because it's pretty much on the back. But like he as another brother that has conditional inheritance has to marry within a certain time frame, and so he has to choose a wife. And originally, when you first open up the book, the wife that he has chosen for himself backs out, and so he's left with his employee, which is actually his brother's best friend, and she is more than willing to play this role. She is also his assistant, I believe. I think it's been a minute. I read this at the beginning of July. And so like there's already like this tension where she knows him almost too well, and she sees behind the veil, and she sees the real him and how he really is. And I guess, to be fair, the book is almost like her trying to tame him or like break him, but like not in a bad way, but like kind of like a wild horse needs to be broken. Like he's just somebody who, as a boss, as a person, he just flippantly does whatever he wants selfishly. And I would say out of all the brothers that I've read so far, he was like the worst because he's very like self-centered. But what's funny is when you actually read the previous book, you see that he was one of the brothers that was raising the others. So I feel like as he grew up, because he had to grow up really fast, he became very jaded because he had an alcoholic father. He had a father who was very absent in his life. So a lot of that trauma plays in with his relationship with Iris, where he feels like, you know, basically like he's trying to not get close to her because he doesn't want someone to abandon him. He has like abandonment trauma issues. So he pushes everybody away, and she just breaks through all of his barriers and she opens up his heart to new possibilities. The banter between them was really sweet and sultry and nice, and I just found myself enjoying this story a lot more. The pace was really great, and the way that it ended was so adorable. It was like the most like epic little rom-com ending, and it was just like the progression of seeing the character change through the story was really cool because you got to see his temperament, personality change. It's kind of true to real life. Like you might have somebody who has so much pain and trauma, and they're like an onion, and you have to like, you know, peel them off layer by layer. But like when you get to the core of who that person is, when they're healing or they're being healed by the love and kindness of somebody else, they can change. And so for me, the deeper meaning behind this story was also like, don't give up on anyone. Everybody has their own crap that they walk into a relationship with, but love, patience, kindness, and, you know, just trying to be the person who sees the best in everyone can really heal the other person involved. So anyway, I love that. It was a great story. So the next book I read for personal reasons, I had posted a video of like basically my journey through grief. And I had shared candidly that bitterness was one of the things that I struggled with a lot whenever I6lost my father in October of 2023. So I added this book. It's called Bitterness, The Root That Pollutes by Lou Priolo. I need to put him up here. That's probably not how you say his name. But I gave this book a 3-star. It was really good. It talked about how bitterness can basically infiltrate your entire life and all of your relationships, and how just letting even the littlest bit of bitterness consume you can consume everything in every relationship in your life. And it gave you a lot of really good practical steps as to how to manage it and get rid of it in your life. So it was a very, very good book for me. And if I didn't say it already, gave it a 3-star. My only critique would be that it was too short. And I think they're supposed to be, but also I felt like there could have been more like life application in it, not just information. Next book I have was a really fun story. It was like almost very Gilmore Girls-esque because it took place in this small town called Clay Creek, and it had all of these quirky characters that you just fell in love with. But this was a NetGalley arc, and it was called Spring Fling, and I forget the author, and I'm gonna put it here so you can see. I think it's Annie something. But it was a really fun story. I ended up giving it a 3-star, but there were some reasons. So it follows Miley and Ben. They are childhood best friends. He moves in across the street from her, and their houses are like absolutely similar because they were built in the same time frame. And so they grow up together. They grow up kind of like relying on each other and being each other's rock. And then the book opens up to where like we basically see that they're leaving each other because they've been best friends, but now it's graduation and they have to go their own separate ways. And she is like grappling with this idea that should she tell him that she loves him, and she doesn't. And then so much time passes by, and so we get different timelines. And then it flashes forward to where now she is in her life. She is still in Clay Creek, which is the place that Ben wanted to get away from so badly. He wanted to study to become a professor, I believe. And so she is still in the town. She has her own bait and tackle shop, which is like really well known and very successful. And they host a huge fishing competition. And it's kind of neat because I've never read anything with like fishing being like a fishing competition being like the climax of the book, but it was actually really cute. So the town opens up with all these quirky characters. They have this little place that they always go, kind of like Luke's. It's called the Cracked Egg. It's their diner, and you get to know all the characters in the town, and you get to know Miley's grandmother, who also raised them, her and her sister. And Miley's grandmother is just hilarious. She's kind of a potty mouth. She's kind of like in everyone's business, and it's so funny. I found myself laughing and giggling. And truly, I probably could have given this book a 4-star, but the reason I didn't is because the ending was super rushed. The character development was so rich that the plot suffered. So like, whereas you were like drawn in with all these characters and you're like rooting for them and you love them, the plot was like falling apart and not really well put together. Anyway, flash forward, she's in this town. Her best friend ends up inheriting the house that he grew up in. So he ends up being drawn back to Clay Creek to sell that home. And he accidentally breaking into her house in the middle of the night when he returns, because the houses are so similar. They were built at the same time. So the first encounter with each other in over 10 years is that she's trying to shoot him because he is like trying to break into her house, which was hilarious. And I really enjoyed this story. Like, give it a fair shake. You may really like it. It will not be released for some time, and I'll put the release date here. But yeah, it was just a super cute story. I loved it, but the plot just needed more. But the love story was wonderful, and there were, I wouldn't say, like, okay, it was like open door, but like cracked door maybe. There were only 3 scenes that I can think of, and they weren't very descriptive. Like, I honestly felt like the author just wanted to skip past it. So I felt like their romance was very appropriate and not icky. And I really just, yeah, I liked this story. But I gave it a 3-star because the plot could have been better. Next book I read was Becoming Elizabeth Elliot, and that is by Elle Vaughn. I gave it a 3-star only because I just found that if you are doing a memoir of someone, I just kind of feel like there should be pertinent information in it, and not just like, okay, here's everything in her life, let's just throw it all out there. I felt like this author really didn't do a good job of organizing the information of her life and presenting it in a way that made Elizabeth Elliot look good. A lot of what she did was kind of exploit her like inner thoughts, because she shared a lot of journal entries and like inner thoughts and inner situations like in her personal life that weren't related to ministry, that were like just not maybe appropriate. And I found myself feeling almost embarrassed for Elizabeth Elliot. And I have since learned from friends that the author who wrote this didn't even like Elizabeth Elliot. So you could really definitely feel that tone in the book. It was almost like this person did a few good things, but overall this person kind of sucked. And that's kind of like, it just felt very, I don't know. It wasn't like an accolade. It was more like this person did a few good things, but a lot of bad things too, and stupid things. Like, it just, I don't know. So for me, if I was writing someone's life work and what they did, I would be so careful to put in pertinent information, like the highlights of their life, right? That made their destiny and purpose shine and made all their work look really good. And so yeah, I just felt like this book wasn't it for me. I didn't like the doctrine in it. I didn't like a lot of what I was reading. So I found myself really dragging through it. So I honestly wouldn't recommend this book to anyone. If you're going to read Elizabeth Elliot, I would read from her own work, her own writing, or her husband's own writing. You will be much more inspired. I loved this book. It was so cute. Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. And this involves Eve and Shep and Ethan. It's kind of a little love triangle. It was such a beautiful story, but not real. It was like it wasn't, it was a romance, but almost not. It was almost like a love letter to pregnancy. So this girl, she gets pregnant accidentally because she ends up getting in a relationship, like a one-night stand with this bartender who says he never does that, she never does that, but either way, they both got in a situation where she ends up being pregnant. And there's a lot of different things at play. Infertility is brought up a lot in this book, as well as pregnancy, because her best friend is struggling to be happy for her because her best friend knows it was an accidental pregnancy, and her best friend is trying so hard to get pregnant. And so there's a lot of like really important issues that are discussed in the book. You know, like accidental pregnancy, single motherhood, infertility. So there's a lot of different things that I would say are addressed. But what was so rich about this book was this main character, Eve, her inner monologue was the entire book's triumph. Her inner monologue, the way she thought, the way she carried herself, who she was so self-possessed. And so the book, like hearing her own thoughts and how she thinks about the world, was so hilarious and entertaining. I fell in love with her. She was such a great character. And what happens is she ends up telling the father of the child that she's pregnant. The father of the child is now in a relationship and is struggling. Like, does he even want anything to do with the baby? Does he want to focus on his relationship? So there's a lot of different tension in the book, but the best character to follow her as a like leading role, to be the supporting role, is Shep, which is her sister or her best friend's brother. He is a golden retriever of, oh my gosh, in every way. Like, he is Abby Jimenez's Justin in Just for the Summer, maybe even better. Like, he's so adorable. Shep is what every woman dreams of. The knight in shining armor that says, you know, hey, I don't care if that's my biological child. I'm going to love it. I'm going to raise it. I'm going to be the best. So like, you see how all of these problems start and then the progression of how they all get better and how the book ends. It was just so good. Just go read it. The next book I read was The Summer of Yes, and this is by Courtney Walsh, and I'm going to tread lightly because I know this was a fan favorite of so many different people, and it was a 5-star read for many of my friends, so I'm going to be respectful of that and not share all of my thoughts. But overall, the book just kind of let me down. I had heard so much hype around it, and I really was so excited to pick it up, and it was actually a NetGalley arc for me, so I ended up reading it. And although the underlying message of the story about, you know, like life is a gift, life is too short, seize every moment, say yes to the things you've been saying no to, what's holding you back from saying yes to your dreams. Like, while that was good, it's almost like you can go to a play and the message is good, but the acting was kind of lackluster. That's sort of how I felt. The message purported was great, but the way it was presented was just not unique, in my opinion. The characters didn't really grip me. There was nothing really happening for me. I felt very unemotional reading the book. I didn't feel drawn by all the different scenarios. So basically, you're following this character who has a near-death experience. She is a business mogul of sorts, and up, you know, rising up the ladder. And she gets put in a hospital room with a currently dying business tycoon, and the business tycoon has a makeup line, and she is like incredible, and she's so sought after and so successful. And so basically you get to see it's definitely like The Devil Wears Prada, like the regrets of somebody who didn't say yes to things they should have, like family and the things that they were passionate about. And then you see a girl who's just starting out on the same like path. And so basically what happens is you see how it could be and how it will not be, because this person is going to change the narrative. So the younger person begins to get kind of convicted, like, I'm saying no to everything, and here's this person who I look up to, who I see that even though she accomplished her dream, she doesn't seem fulfilled. And so the main character kind of goes on this journey with the older lady who owns the company, who is not happy with her life, who is currently dying, and has a lot of regret. She goes on this like road trip journey to kind of help her face things in the past that she couldn't say yes to before. And while this story sounds epic, and I'm not saying it wasn't, and for many people it moved them deeply and it was such an important thing, for me, I just found myself not thinking that the writing was very unique. The characters were kind of unoriginal, and I felt like I had just it could have been done so much better. That's all I'm going to say. So, done with that. Sorry, all of my friends. I don't want to offend anybody, but you know, we all have our different take on books, and that's fine. Next book that I have, and my light is going in and out, so I'm sorry about that, is The Library of Borrowed Hearts by Laura Gilmore. I'm not gonna lie, I pretty much only chose this as a NetGalley ARC because of Gilmore. I saw the name and it sounded so much like Laura Gilmore, I just wanted to read it. This book was very cute. It was, I forget what the term is. It's like when there's a lot of writing and letters back and forth in a book. So basically there are dual timelines and there are different POVs, but you follow modern day characters and then characters in the past. The modern day characters find this book that has love letters and love notes and conversations between people in the past, but the people in the present day actually know who had been writing those letters, and they find basically this old hermit guy who is the author of some of the letters in these library books. So let me back up. The letters are in library books. Back then, this guy falls in love with a girl who worked as a librarian in the old days, like back in the 1930s, 40s, and he ends up checking out library books and writing conversations to her in the library books. And then when he sees her in person, he would give her some kind of signal that the library book that he wrote in, that's what it was, like a line from the book or something. And then she would then know what it is, then pick up the book, and they would kind of have these conversations back and forth in different library books. And then one of them is actually like a forbidden book. I think it's called the Capricorn of Cancer. Something about cancer. Capricorn, I don't remember. It's right here. They end up having this conversation back and forth. They fall in love. And it's kind of like other people who could fall in love, discovering a story about people who have fallen in love. So old love and new love colliding in this love story where there's found family. And there's a young girl in the modern day raising her mom's children who her mom abandoned her and her family. So it's a single woman who has all these brothers and sisters that she's raising, and she's trying to find love. And she gets inspired by this old-timey love story that she finds in these books that are in the libraries, like donation bin or whatever. And she's like, look at all these love stories. Look at this love story that existed way back then, and the integrity of love. And there's a lot of different like sweet messages. The story was a little difficult for me. It was almost like so much was going on. It lost my attention. The story was really cute, but I will say that like the modern day versus the back then, the timelines were written so big of a contrast. Like the modern day was so modern and the back then was so back then that together they didn't really mesh well. Does that make sense? Like it's almost like the writing back then when she wrote about the past was better than the writing that she wrote for the future. So it almost seemed like two different authors were writing this book. But I gave it a 3-star. It was a cute story. The execution wasn't great. Getting to the end of the line. Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This was such a sweet book. I'm not going to gush about it too much because I feel like everyone's been talking about this and it's like you've heard this before. But I gave it a 4-star. It's a very sweet story. It reminds me so much of The Summer I Turned Pretty. 2 brothers, a lake house, one girl whose family buys the lake house beside them. They're every summer, paths cross. The girl ends up falling in love with one of the brothers. There's multiple obstacles to their relationship. And then there's like the confession of love, the denying of love. And then there is flash forward into the future. How are they going to reconcile the past with where they are in the future? Can they rekindle this flame, or is it lost forever? And so it was like a really sweet story about second chance romance and like, what if we had said yes to something back then? Like, how would it be different? What if we were just honest with our feelings? It kind of like the underlying message is like, this is all the life that could have not happened had you just been honest about your feelings or accepted it. So basically this girl, she opens up and she confesses her love to her best friend, and he sort of denies her because he doesn't think they're ready. And so they go through a lot of unnecessary pain and heartache in life to then be ready, but then are they really ready for each other in the future? So it's very sweet, and it was really nostalgic. It had all the summer vibes. It's very much kind of like The Summer I Turned Pretty vibes. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great book. The only thing I guess I would say is there were a few things in the book that I didn't necessarily love. But yeah, it was a great summer read. I would pick it up for sure. I saved all of my talking for this. Basically, this book I randomly picked up because a very close friend was like gushing about it. It made her cry. Another great friend I had really endorsed this book because she loved what it was about, the message behind it. I swore off Colleen Hoover a long time ago. I read several of her books, but one in particular I threw across the room, and that was Hopeless. I have never been so enraged by a book in all my life, and I literally, absolutely told myself I would never read another one of her books again. I am not someone who likes essay or DV or anything like that. It very much affects me. However, I read this book and I was so blown away by her storytelling, personal application. I know it was from her own life. This book, It Ends With Us, was based off of Colleen Hoover's own personal life. And if you read the author's note, there is a beginning scene where the type of trauma happens. That is exactly what happened in her own life when she was a child. And so the personableness of, is that a word? The personableness? The personal aspect of the book was so moving to me. The fact that it was like her own life and how traumatic it must have been to write about her own life in this situation. But it follows Lily Bloom, who is a beautiful, amazing girl who is sadly in a very bad family situation where the father is very chronically awful and the mother stays in this horrible situation. And it just follows how she sees all of this trauma unfold between her parents, and she vows she will never get in a relationship like this. And at the same time, she also meets this guy named Atlas. He is a senior at her high school who ends up being kicked out of his home and is homeless and is living in the abandoned house beside her. She ends up striking up a friendship with him that will literally follow her entire life and haunt her to this current day, because there's dual timelines. It's, the past and flash forward. Flash forward to today. Lily is at her dad's funeral. She can't say anything positive about him. She's met with all this childhood trauma at the funeral and she just can't go on, and she finds herself on this rooftop trying to just go over the events of the day and calm down and have some self, reflection time. And this guy named Ryle comes up there and he's explosive and he's like kicking a chair and acting psycho, and she ends up talking to him. They strike up a friendship. Basically, they think they're never going to see each other again, but they talk, and she's drawn in by his charm and charisma. She's also kind of maybe drawn in by the mystery of him, like, why was he so mad, what's going on? They start this kind of thing where they tell each other naked truths, like the ultimate truth without holding anything back. And that stays with her. And so she begins to kind of find him popping up in her life randomly. And by fate, he ends up becoming a part of her life. Well, as everyone knows by now, because the trailer of the movie is everywhere, that relationship very quickly goes from sweet to sour. Something bad happens and she is taken aback and thrown. And she's like, how could this be happening? He's supposed to be different. He's not like my father, but like, what's happening? So she goes through another traumatic situation, kind of similar to her mother's situation. And the book is not about why women stay. The book should be about why do men harm? And that's what Justin Bellatoni, is that his name? The director of the movie, he was saying, I made this movie for all of the women who wanted to be, like, they want people to hear their story. They want to raise awareness that this happens. This is a real thing. And the question should never be, why do women stay? It should be, why do men harm? Women love, they care, they give, and sometimes men take advantage of that. And I'm not saying like I'm a man hater or anything, but there are certain situations where, we have to look at like, well, why do they do that? Why is everyone always saying, well, why did she stay with him? Well, why did he do that? And then also there are a lot of factors. there are a lot of factors in situations whereas like, why do women stay? Well, they stay for a lot of different reasons. And it's not always because they're these weak people with bad self-esteem. They are people who try to see the good in someone else and try to foster the good in someone else. And so basically the story was like just so close to my heart, because I had to think about how many people do I know who go through some form of this tragedy and some form of mistreatment, whether it be emotional, mental, physical, whatever it may be. There are women who we know in our circles, even maybe close circles, who are struggling with a relationship that they have hidden from the world. And just like Lily, she doesn't want him to be seen as a bad person. Like when he does bad things, she hides it, she lies about it. She doesn't want his colleagues to know. She doesn't want to affect his career. She tries to protect him. Like, how many people do you know protect a bad person? I guess for me, it just made me feel like I want to just be more like on the radar to look for signs and problems, and be that person who can be like Lily's best friend and tell her, you know, like, you cannot take him back. You need to leave, and, you know, just be that support. So anyway, that is all I have to say about that. I could go on and on and on and on and on, but I won't. But it was a wonderful book, 5 stars, absolutely worth picking up and going to see the movie. That was my July wrap up. I read 10 books. They were all pretty good. Honestly, I didn't have anything super bad to say about any of them. I ranged from a 2-star all the way up to a 5-star. I had, let's see, how many 5-star books? I only had 2 this entire month, which, you know, that happens sometimes. Sometimes people don't have 5 stars for like half a year. But I guess for me, I like to really look deeper and see what is the message that each book is trying to say. And I encourage you to also do that. You know, like, don't take every story at face value. Authors write stories to also teach a lesson or tell a story or give advice. And so look deeper for the deeper meaning, like, why is the story being told? What can I learn from the story? It's not just entertainment all the time. Sometimes it's also like a life lesson that we can learn. I hope your tea is delicious and your books are amazing, and I will see you back here next time for my birthday haul. Bye-bye.